Hi, welcome to episode 26 of Two Girls, a Guy, and a TARDIS. And we've almost been on for a year. We found out today. We looked that up. This is episode 26. We're going to probably talk a little Doctor Who. We have some guests from our new sponsor, the Heartlife Corporation. All the life you'll ever need. Actually, so we're going to introduce them right now because Nicole's here. Joanna's here.
Yes, I'm here.
Hi.
And from our fair city, an excellent... Do you guys call it an audio drama?
Audio drama, radio drama, any of those work.
All right. We have Jeffrey and Betsy.
Hello.
Hey, this is Jeffrey Gardner. I am the executive producer and director of Our Fair City.
And I'm Betsy Palmer. I'm the production manager.
So I guess I'm going to just start off and say, you guys, we like what you're doing. I really enjoy it. I've told many people they should listen to it. So hopefully they do.
Well, thank you so much. That's absolutely what we like to hear.
And you guys are also Doctor Who fans. We'll get into that a little bit later on, which that's going to be nice because there's absolutely no Doctor Who news. And other than there was one photo released from the set, and that was it.
Yep, and it was everyone we expected.
Yeah, it was exactly what we expected. Exactly. So you guys have been on for 4 seasons, and you've done some in-between stuff also, bloopers and whatnot, right?
Yeah, we've released 4 seasons of our show, along with a couple other kind of side projects. We did an audio version of H.P. Lovecraft's The Rats in the Walls, and some music from the world of Heartlife and other stuff like that. But we're finishing production now on season 5.
You guys also had some comic tie-ins, right? Or there was some comics done, right?
Yeah, exactly. We look at our website as the portal to the world of Our Fair City because we are also releasing our 3rd comic anthology at the same time as we're starting to release season 5 on January 18th.
Yeah, we this whole world of Heartlife, and we can talk a little bit more about what that is in a sec. Has grown in a really exciting way. Like Betsy said, we've had a number of really exciting graphic novel artists and webcomic artists join us. So we're producing a comic series and a webcomic and an audio drama all at once. And it's a lot, but it's been a lot of fun, kind of experimenting with new media for all of us.
That's very cool. I mean, I've listened to, like I said, I've listened up to episode 15 of season 4, and there is some nice twists and turns throughout the whole story. I know Clayton was the creator of Was he the creator of the overall show?
Yeah.
Correct?
So,
like, how did come into? I was gonna say you started explaining exactly what I was gonna ask. Is how did it come into fruition?
Sure. So, this has been a brainchild of Clayton's for a while. I guess since undergrad. For him, Clayton and I met in it would have been April of 2009. We worked for and still work for a certain very large science museum in Chicago, and we were at that point, as Betsy likes to call it, we were professional wizards, which is not exactly what you'd expect from a science museum, but there was an exhibit from a certain British boy wizard at that museum. So we were both hired to do education for that exhibit, and we met, and we found that we not only liked various science fiction things, but also theater. And actually, a lot of the early people who were part of Our Fair City all met there. But it kind of slowly grew. It started off actually as we were all primarily live theater people in the initial group, at least. I believe none of us had much experience with audio drama. So we were envisioning this as a reading series or a series of live performances that we were going to do in bars and theaters and places like that. And then we said, we could record them also and release them on the internet. And then we realized that we were doing 2 shows at once, both a recorded show and a live show, and just said, okay, well, let's pare this down. And so the kind of initial big launch of Our Fair City was just as as a podcast. And we've actually since expanded back into doing some live stuff, which has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, you were at the Chicago Fringe Festival, correct? Doing a live.
Yeah,
was it two live episodes?
What's that?
Was it 2 live shows you did there, or was it just the one?
We've only done 1 year of the Chicago Fringe Festival,
Okay.
and that was really fun. And we'll be coming back this year. We're very excited. That'll be this coming September, I believe.
It's Labor Day weekend.
Yeah, Labor Day weekend, and the following or week before it in Jefferson Park here in Chicago. And it's a great time. You will see, 10,000 things you never expected at a Fringe Festival. So, we've performed at the Fringe Festival. We've also performed a couple of times at Red Tape's CFAN night and at the Minneapolis Convergence Science Fiction Festival, which is a lot of fun. Also, it was my first exposure to the Sci-Fi Con experience, and I kind of went into it as a wide-eyed child, like, wow, what is going on around me? Holy moly! So that's the nuts and bolts of how we became a show. Kind of artistically, we, we're all theater people and sci-fi geeks and science educators, and we've been looking at where the world is going and saying, man, if we don't shape something up soon, this world of Heartlife, this post-apocalyptic world, kind of ravaged by climate change and corporate greed and such like that, is going to be a really unpleasant place to live in. And so we wanted to tell stories about that, because that's, it's something we can do at least.
Yeah, I mean, I get this feel from it. I mean, I'm a rather avid video gamer. I'm a sci-fi geek. There's a lot of things I do, and it has it reminds me of the Fallout series of games just a little bit. Like, the post-apocalyptic world you've created reminds me of a lot of the games I've played, so I really liked it because of that.
Sure, yeah. No, there's definitely a lot of inspiration from those things.
Those, and also, I mean, many of us work in, in the corporate world as well.
Right.
So every once in a while, we live so much in this corporate world in the show that, like, I periodically take notes in meetings of things, or, if something, even things that I say often, I can see that this conversation is no longer productive, is the sort of sentence I would never have thought I would have said, but did like a week ago. So we pull a lot from our sort of personal experiences in working within bureaucracies as well.
That's kind of, I mean, I get the sense that you definitely know your material. I mean, I've worked in an office that was a cube farm, and now I don't, but it was with the same company. So I know what you mean. How I hear things that happen on a show, and I go, I could see that happening here, without a doubt. You guys were live theater people. You were saying, how different is it to do the radio or audio drama?
Sure. Well, it's been very different. It's been a really fun thing to learn about. In the theater world, we tend to have these really intense, 4 or 5 week rehearsal processes, and then a 6-week run, and then the show's done, and you work with a completely new group of people. And we've had, we've certainly been adding people to the team, but we've had a pretty stable team for almost 3 years now of production. And so that's been really fun. It's a really neat thing because it's almost a little more like film in that you just need one good take, and so but also you get to kind of try as many things as you want when you're recording. I guess maybe kind of like a podcast. You could record 6 different versions of this conversation and then use the best one. But that whole process has been really cool to play with, and it's been a learning process. I think I can definitely hear changes and improvements each season. I think now I go back and I listen and say, oh man, what were we thinking? I mean, we started off recording our show, we had one microphone, and we said, okay, so we know we need sound baffling, but we don't exactly know what that means. So, actor, we're going to put you in Clayton's closet, and we're going to stick the microphone in there with you, and we're going to record. And now, we have a studio with, multi-track recording, and we can get lots of different people going in at the same time, and we don't have to put people in closets to record them, although sometimes it adds to the ambiance. And we understand how baffling works, so it's been a neat process to learn. But yeah, no, I would say the big difference is just the length of time we get to spend with the same group of people, and just the community that has grown up around this show has been really fun to be a part of.
Cool. Yeah, our podcast, we recorded in my basement. I always make the jokes that we're like the poor man's Doctor Who podcast. Because every other podcaster I meet, they have like the MacBook Pro, they have these fancy USB microphones, they have nice. And here I have, I think I'm the only Windows-based podcaster in the world, to be honest. Sometimes, and I have just a regular 4-channel, just little PV mixer and a couple mics, and that's how we are right now. And I remember seeing some photos of you guys recording, and it looked like you were actually in Clayton's place recording. It looked like it was just an apartment, and I just thought, I'm like, I know exactly how that feels.
Well, and that's the cool thing about the audio drama medium is if you've got a really great group of people, you can do so much with so little, and that was part of why we ended up in the audio drama world. We wanted to tell stories with 10,000 mole people in a cave chanting. And we don't have, $10 million in a special effects budget. So this was one of our good options for doing that.
Yeah, and it works out well. And you're right. From the first season on, it seems that you've all become more comfortable in your voices and your voice acting.
Oh, absolutely.
Because I did exactly what you just said. I've been listening to the newer ones, season 4 and 3. And I had a buddy over yesterday, and I was telling him about the show, and he's like, "Oh, it sounds really interesting." I'm like, "Well, here, I'll put the first one on." And as I'm listening to it, I'm like, "Man, it's really evolved a lot." Like it was good then, but what you guys are doing now, I mean, yeah, you guys have come a long way.
Well, you could you see the same thing with the at least the new Doctor Who.
Yeah, true.
You can see those budgets increasing, and the kind of I'm not saying that. The newest seasons are the best of the new Who, but that's a conversation for later, maybe.
In about 5 or 10 minutes, we'll get to that.
You can definitely tell they've got more money.
Yes, they do. The problem is I don't know if they know what to do with it sometimes.
Well, we have been talking about the show without saying what it's about, so maybe you'd like to tell our listeners who might not be familiar with it what the show's about.
Sure, absolutely. So, Our Fair City is set in the ruins of what was once Hartford, Connecticut. A long time in the future, and global climate change has rendered New England an icy plain, and the outside is completely uninhabitable, and humanity has kind of been concentrated into a big, basically, tower arcology run by the HeartLife Corporation. And now, a thing you should know about Hartford, if you don't already, is that it's a big center for insurance and annuity corporations. And so we kind of looked at that and said, okay, so climate change is ravaging the world, and growing seasons become shorter, and food becomes scarce, and governments start shutting down. So who is able to take control? Well, the people with the most money can buy the most guns and hire the most people, and that's going to be these big corporations who have concentrated power in these places. So we looked at what would happen if an insurance company slowly evolved into the only form of government available, and kind of the only form of self-preservation for a city. And I think to myself and probably most of the rest of us, that's a really scary idea. If an insurance company got to make every decision in your life for you. But so the show looks at how various different people in the HeartLife Corporation deal with this reality. And without spoiling anything, we come to the HeartLife Corporation in a time of upheaval and change, because otherwise it's a really boring show. And we look at how different people in the strata, how managers and young idealists and people who are just trying to get by survive and thrive in this world, in a world that we really hope isn't coming, but day to day looks more and more and more likely.
For any of our listeners that do any gaming, like I was mentioning earlier, it reminds me, and who did I say this to? I might have mentioned this to Ryan. I'm not really sure, in an email. It reminds me of a cross between, there was a game called BioShock, where you went to this, what was left of a utopian underwater city, where scientists were supposed to be allowed to do what they wanted and all this, and it didn't work out. So it reminds me of a cross between that and the Fallout series of games, which are post-apocalyptic. So I really do enjoy it, and I am afraid of those same things.
We're huge BioShock fans, and would absolutely be lying if we said that we weren't playing those games when a lot of this stuff was kind of cultivating and growing.
Yeah, it had a distinct, like, it reminded me of what Rapture would have been like right after it started to crumble.
Sure.
Which is kind of when, well, without, violent gangs of, juiced up people running around with wrenches, but...
Well, not yet.
Not yet, that's true.
Spoilers. No, there will, well, I can't promise there won't be wrenches, but it's not the plan yet.
No, you do have some creative characters, and your writing team does do all of you have input into the writing of it? Or is it just basically the writers?
We currently have a team of 5 writers, including Clayton, I believe. And some of them also double up as, also actors, or in David Reinstrom's case, he's also working on sound editing and helping to produce, so he's in, everything. But the writing team contributes all of it, and they do that in a pretty formalized and structured way these days. Where they meet once a week, they each have episodes they work on, they read them out loud a lot. We found that that's really important for, increasing and maintaining the quality of our work, is to open ourselves up to a lot of criticism from each other.
No good idea goes unchallenged.
Yeah.
It's our kind of our motto.
Nor does any bad one.
Yeah, and then after the writers work and grind away on these scripts, we open them up to our larger community. We bring a bunch of the actors and designers and artists and board members and programmers all together into a room, and we read the whole season, and we get as much feedback as we can and road test it, and then as we work on them in the studio, things continue to evolve. We try to get input from as many different people as we can, but that 5-person writing team who we're just so lucky to have, and I can say that because I'm not a writer at all. I get to sit in on almost all of their meetings, but kind of just to listen and to absorb, and it's so cool to watch them work. We're really lucky to have found all of them.
Yeah, they do a wonderful job. I mean, some of the characters they've come up with along the process, or along the seasons, have been great. And there's ones that I start off, I'm like, I'm not going to like this guy, and then a couple episodes and I'm like, I like this guy. This is the guy I'm rooting for.
It's been really fun for us to watch some of those characters grow. Characters we didn't think we were going to like, or we didn't think we were ever going to use again. We realized, oh man, this person's becoming a regular.
Yeah, your show, for being somewhat of not sarcastic, but
cynical.
Yeah, but it's not real heavy. Like, it does. You guys, it doesn't take itself ultra seriously. And
sassy.
Possibly, but I will say you have less plot holes than a lot of shows I watch on TV. So your writing staff, I think, does a great job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we try to look out for that.
Well, and that giant read-through that we do at least once before every season goes into recording is really helpful with that, because it's people who haven't been living in it for the last 6 months and writing it. And so there is a lot in that meeting, a lot of people saying, hey, wait, last time I saw my character, they were over here. How did they get here? Or why is this happening? We do a lot of that kind of discussion there so that we can try to avoid plot holes whenever possible.
Very cool. Very good.
Always good to avoid the plot holes.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a minute, too. So let's so your season 5 debuts now. Is it going to be on the internet January 18th?
Yeah, it sure will. We'll be throwing our party January 18th here in Chicago. Is this a good time to get details on that? Awesome.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Betsy, do you want to do the plug?
Sure. Yeah, we are throwing a Season 5 launch party on January 18th at Defibrillator Performance Art Gallery. That's at 1136 North Milwaukee. It's right near the Division Blue Line stop, if any of you guys happen to be around here in Chicago. It's a suggested donation of $20 for the ticket, and that includes VIP refreshments. We have some drinks. We have some food, and the food pictures actually went up on our Facebook today, and they look awesome. We're also featuring dance tunes by DJ Catnip. We've got an environmental design that's all set within the world of Heart Life, and we have live performances from both Archie Funny Pants, who you've met before, and a new character, Charlie Wynn. Let's see what else. We're also doing a photo booth by Sebastian Orr Photography and Jenna Braunstein Photography, and the premiere of Our Fair City, the comic anthology #3. So there's all kinds of exciting stuff that's happening at that party. It starts at 8 o'clock on the 18th.
And we'll also, if you're not in the area, we'll be putting up the first episode on the website and through our iTunes podcast and podcast feed if you will use various other types of podcast rippers on the 18th, probably in the evening when we start the party.
So now our big question: you both have started watching Doctor Who on Netflix. Now you've watched up to season 6, and you said you've heard basically what happens throughout the rest. Where did you begin watching it? How did you both get started?
So right after college, I moved in with my parents for a little while because I didn't know what to do with myself. And a friend of mine in my hometown was like, oh my God, you have to watch this. And she actually started me at the last Christopher Eccleston episode that goes into David Tennant.
Okay.
So then I jumped back later to pick up that first season of the new Doctor Who. But yeah, living in your hometown when you don't know very many people anymore, you sure can tear through pretty much all the Doctor Who you can get your hands on. How about you?
God, I'm trying to remember when I started. I think I came to it pretty late. Most of David Tennant was out. I think maybe it was I started watching right about when he was leaving the show. But started back with the Christopher Eccleston stuff. I had a roommate when I first moved to Chicago who was a big fan of classic Doctor Who, and he helped get me into it. He kind of, when every once in a while I'd be watching and I kind of walk in and was like, what's going on over here? Okay.
There's a guy covered in green bubble wrap. What the?
And I was always a little, a little mystified, but I think I had burned through all of the back issues of the X-Files and Star Trek, and said, well, you know what? People have been talking about this. I might as well give it a listen or go give it a watch, and then, of course, as you do, looked up a month later and said, oh. Did I go to work? Uh-oh. What happened to my life?
Yeah, I know that feeling. I'll come home, and even with the kid. I mean, she's 19 months or 20 months old now, and she always wants to watch Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. And once in a while, I'll pick her up from daycare and come home and be like, "We're watching Doctor Who. We're not watching Clubhouse. You're playing with your toys." We actually recently interviewed Peter Davison, who was the Fifth Doctor, back in the old classic series. And we interviewed Louise Jameson, who was an assistant of the Fourth Doctor. And Nicole interviewed Michael Jaston and Terry Malloy, who were both in the classic series also. And we just recently did that in November.
Oh, neat.
Yeah, so I was pretty impressed that we were allowed to do that. And
my old Who connection is Sylvester McCoy said my name on stage and made a joke about Arcare City at DragonCon this year.
Nice.
He was presenting the which one is it? Which podcast award? The Parsec Awards happened there, and we were being considered for one of them. And he kind of went, "Oh, Jeffrey, oh, Arcare, which city? Which city is Arcare City?" And I think Clayton and I went, cool.
Nice. So, when you went back to watch the Eccleston episodes, what did you guys think of them?
So Clayton and I differ pretty strongly on Eccleston, actually. I find him very difficult to deal with, and so it was actually really good that my friend started me at the end of his stuff, because even having been invested in the show, I had a really hard time with those episodes, and part of it is, part of it is the production values, but part of it too, I think, is that I just find his version of the Doctor pretty off-putting. Clayton's argument against this, this is one of our favorite, like, drunken soapbox arguments. Clayton's argument is that Eccleston's Doctor should be, like, angry and off-putting because, he's just come from, like, the destruction of everyone else like himself. Which, I find intriguing. I prefer the other Doctors.
Yeah, I mean, I was a classic fan for a long... Well, I was a classic fan when I was a kid. And I was actually in London in 2004 or 5, right before it came back on with my wife, and we saw a poster for it on, like, a train station. So, well, we're glad you're back.
Me too.
So we were in London. My wife had never... she wasn't my wife yet. My girlfriend at the time had never heard of the show. And I, came to a dead stop staring at this poster going... And she had no idea what I was talking about, and I looked like probably a complete idiot to her. And so then I was like, yeah, it's Doctor Who, and I explained it to her, and when it aired, we started watching it. And at the time, I really liked Eccleston's character, and when they switched off, I was kind of disappointed at first. And then I watched Tennant, and I think out of the new ones, Tennant's been my favorite. But I do still like what Chris did with the show to bring it back.
That's true, yeah.
I mean,
well, and Jeff and I actually had a conversation pretty recently about how Matt Smith is also a very talented actor, but David Tennant is such a craftsman to watch. Watching him act is like watching something being built right, and that's always really fun to watch. Yeah,
I mean, Matt Smith's episodes, Matt Smith, Karen Gillan, and
Arthur
Darvill, who was completely underused because I thought, could have been so much. His character could have been so much more. But the show elevated to rock star status with them, but it was already on its way up from David Tennant, Mm-hmm. And I've gone back with people, I introduced a guy at work to the show, and he's gone back and been watching them, and it made me want to go back and watch some of the old Tennant episodes, and yeah, I really like. There's some Matt Smith stuff I think is really good, but Tennant's still, I think, the guy for me. Until we'll see how the new guy is. So,
sure.
We'll see how Capaldi is, but
I think it's funny for me. It often feels like whichever the one I've seen last is the one I think, that's the one I really like. And I think what it is I think each of them has brought some really interesting things. I love Christopher Eccleston. I think Matt Smith is the first one I really bought as being an alien.
Yeah, I could agree with that.
And I was really, it felt like a very, very, very different character, and I think I got really bored with a lot of the plot things they've done with him, just in terms of it getting too big and overblown, and I don't think they always earned the stakes they were trying to build to. But I think Matt Smith's portrayal as a really inhuman and kind of dangerous thing was great. I think some of his kind of one-off episodes, the Van Gogh episode, is one of my favorites, if not my favorite.
Yeah, there were some really good episodes, like you said, some of the one-offs. Like, you didn't see any of Season 7, but it started good for me. It had one called Asylum of the Daleks right at the beginning, and I thought it was a good episode. And then it kind of went into a lull, and eventually you had this episode with these little square cubes that were everywhere and made me want to punch the TV. So, it picked up in the second half of that season. I mean, but it started off pretty... I thought Asylum was pretty good. I'm like, all right, it seemed to be all right. And then the next one was Dinosaurs on a Spaceship, and it was fun. You know, it wasn't a whole lot plot-wise, but it was fun. And then it went to what is arguably one of Nicole's least favorite episodes.
No, that goes to The End of Time.
That's a classic series one, though. Oh no, you're talking about... Oh, no, End of Time with,
David Tennant.
David Tennant. Yeah, that one's not real good.
That would be my...
Your least favorite.
It's Journey's End.
Journey's End was, I don't know. But, and then, so it did go into a lull there. And, Jeffrey, let's start with you. Which is your favorite Doctor of the new ones that you've seen?
Oh, man. Having just watched little scatterings, I think I'm gonna lean towards Tennant, but I gotta say, like, I like little bits of each of them. And I don't know if I can really draw a line on which one's my favorite. I think they've each brought something really interesting.
I don't know, though. Like, so I think the thing that seals it for me for Tennant is the scene that he has with Donna's grandfather in, like, what was it, a Christmas episode. And he's talking about not wanting to die.
Okay,
it's it's one of the best acted scenes I've seen in years. And that, like, really seals it for me.
I actually agree that I think Tennant had I'm not a huge fan of that episode, personally, but I think the thing was, I could watch it because Tennant was so good in them.
Yeah.
You were watching it for him more than, the stuff around it.
Yeah. That was an interesting episode, because, the episode is meh, but it had some really, like, wonderful moments in it.
The very end of it, when he travels to visit all his companions, when I first saw it, I was like, "Oh, that's so cool!" And then I'm like, "That's really campy, but it's cool."
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like torn between it. I'm like, I probably shouldn't like it, but I kind of do.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I was surprised to find, going back and watching Eccleston, that I really do like a lot of the Rose stuff. I think people around me have disliked her as a companion, and I kind of absorbed a little too much of that. And then when I went back and watched it, I was like, oh no, she did some really cool stuff.
Yeah, I think the first season with her and Chris Eccleston, she was very good.
Well, she was good with Eccleston, I think, because he was so down and crabby at that point and depressed, and then he needed someone to, like, liven him up. Mm-hmm. So she played off of him well, I think. It didn't have quite the same dynamic for me with David Tennant.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. I think the first half of her run with Tennant, the first half of season 2, wasn't bad. But it got to be a little too, I don't know. She seemed almost like a fangirl of him. At times. Near the end of it. I was extremely happy how they brought her back in the 50th. Did you see the 50th or no?
No, we haven't.
Well, they bring her back in an excellent way. They utilize her really well.
Interesting.
Hey, Joanna.
Yeah, I think that was kind of my complaint with a lot of the later Matt Smith stuff too. That I guess the 6th season of Matt Smith. A lot of it ended up feeling like people just talking about how cool he was, and then he would do something, and you're like, okay, can we go back to Rory now? Because the Rory show is what I really want to see.
Yeah, I agreed with that. I think Rory was completely underused. I mean, I think he's been in other stuff. He's a great actor. I think Matt Smith had that, like, I think Matt Smith had a lot of good parts, and I think he appealed to a lot of the younger people. He had this, like, hip, kind of quirky coolness to him, the way he played it, and that really got it did bring in another audience. Every Doctor brings in more audience, except for the 6th Doctor. But every Doctor brings in a different and new audience, and people end up sticking with the show because they like the idea of it, even if their Doctor does leave.
Yeah. Well, it is kind of a brilliant concept, isn't it? Like, to be able to reinvent the show pretty thoroughly on a pretty regular basis. Like, I think that's what allows them to be so long running, is that, like, if it gets used up, if it gets boring, they can reinvent.
Well, when we interviewed, I think, Louise Jameson, we talked about that with her, and even with Peter Davison. And it was whatever person figured out, how are we going to keep the show on the air now that William Hartnell, the first Doctor, is not doing well? How are we going to do the guy that figured out let's just regenerate him.
Yeah.
That guy should have got, like, that guy should be, that's like one of the biggest geniuses in TV history.
But
no one knows who it is.
What's so amazing, though, is that they also didn't just, like, we can recast him, he'll just be a slightly different, older, cranky man. They, like, we're going to make him a completely different person.
Yeah, personality and all.
He's not going to look anything like he did. He's not really going to act that much like he did. We're just going to keep a little bit to keep it consistent and then just go. Like, that must have sounded crazy to come up with.
And they all agreed to it.
Yeah.
And for 1960s Britain, I mean, you had a Middle Easterner running the show, working on the show, a woman producer, right? Wasn't Verity Lambert the producer? Yep. You had this crew of people that you would never see together in that time period, and they created one of the best science fiction shows ever. I mean, it was genius.
Yeah. I would have loved to hear what the original pitch was.
I know, right?
It's a game we play sometimes, kind of like, what did this sound like when the first person proposed it? Like an aircraft carrier, or I guess Doctor Who.
I can only...
Twin Peaks is the other show that I always think, man, what was that pitch meeting like?
Well, I mean, from the comedy aspect, Seinfeld.
Yeah, sure.
What's your show about? Absolutely nothing. Now, Joanna, you were a Tennant fan, right? You came in at David Tennant, correct?
I did.
And is he still your favorite?
I think he is, because, I mean, you never forget your first Doctor, and come to think of it, I'm definitely a Tennant fan. Didn't think of it I didn't think I was, but I'm like, yeah, I miss his episodes, I miss how he did his thing, and I'm looking forward to Peter Capaldi, so
yeah.
I think the show's in good hands with him.
I agree. I think it's gonna be a nice change of pace to not have a love triangle in the TARDIS.
Yes.
I do like Clara though. I really liked Amy and Rory at first, but by the end of their run, Amy really wore on me. I didn't care for her as much, and I think that's the same with Matt Smith. I thought he was great initially because he was quirky and he was different, but then they almost played it up too much at times. Especially when he was saying Doctor Who all the time in a couple episodes. I'm like, all right, come on.
Yeah.
It used to be like so fluid, like it was just like in the old series it was, who was that? The Doctor. Doctor Who. And they cut the scene. Well, now suddenly he's like running around the inside of the TARDIS, it's saying Doctor Who, and I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, it got a little self-indulgent.
Yeah, a little bit. They were still enjoyable.
I did like his doc, because I thought he was, we were kind of talking about that before with him being alien, but I thought he was the first Doctor out of like any of them that convinced me he was like 1,000 years old.
Sure.
Acted really young, but he had
interesting-
that old quality to him.
Yeah, there's a really interesting article written recently about kind of how he's the youngest actor, but a lot of his physical choices were very much old. The wringing of the hands, the hand washing, and a lot of kind of how he walked and ran, and that it seems like he really kind of played that up. Maybe because he looked so young. I liked the feeling that he was a doctor who was decaying and was maybe going senile, but not in a funny or fun way, but in a way that, like, this incredibly powerful, incredibly dangerous creature suddenly was losing control of himself and things around him, and had been used to behaving in this way where he could fix anything or get himself into an impossible situation and then, just pull it off. And then he started slipping a bit and started being just a bit off, and things wouldn't quite go the way he wanted. And that was neat. Because Tennant's doctor was always infallible. And things wouldn't go the way he wanted all the time, but he never screwed up. It felt like, I don't know, maybe I don't have an encyclopedic knowledge, but it always felt like his plans would work, and maybe people would disappoint him, or he would be upset with people, but I liked that Matt Smith was sometimes just wrong. Although that it seems like that went away in maybe season 6, and from what I hear, some season 7.
Yeah, he was the first of the new series doctors that, as a classic fan, reminded me of older ones. He reminded me a lot of Patrick Troughton's second Doctor character, where he was kind of this cosmic clown almost, and people would think he didn't know what he was doing, and then he basically was manipulating the whole thing behind the scenes. And I think a lot of the Matt Smith episodes kind of are like that. Like, he portrays this goofiness, this aloofness, where people they're not threatened by him. They don't think he's going to be the guy that's going to stop them. And then all of a sudden, it was part of his master plan. Until you have a few plot holes that you could drive trucks through.
Yeah. Well, the thing that I think is really interesting about the relationship between Matt Smith the Matt Smith Doctor and Amy is that in a lot of ways I think they're similar in that they're not malicious really, but they're both kind of careless of the people around them. Like, they cause harm by not being careful of people, and by just going forward with what they wanted without thinking about the consequences.
I never thought of that. That's a good point. It's always nice to have people on the show that can bring a fresh perspective. Like what you just said is something I'd never actually thought of. Or how Jeffrey said he was really the first Doctor that portrayed it where he seemed alien. I never really thought about it. But yeah. Him and Amy were very similar in that way. I just got tired of her lecturing the 1,000-year-old Time Lord on what he should be doing.
Yeah.
It's like...
she got a little, severe.
Yeah, there was an episode in season 7 that was a Western one, and it just... I didn't think it was that great an episode. I didn't think it was horrible. It could have been better. But there's basically a war criminal in it that he confronts. And he is willing to give this guy up to protect this town of people. And she's telling him he shouldn't do it. And she's lecturing. I'm like, really? I didn't... There seemed to be just so much lecturing from her and badgering and, I don't know, near the end. Like, it should have just ended. They should have not brought them back after, the end of season 6 when they got when he gave
the
them
house,
the car. They could have just left it there, and it would have been perfectly fine. It would have been a happy ending. And do you guys have favorite episodes?
Yeah. One of my all-time favorites is also a David Tennant episode. I don't think I realized how strongly I come down in favor of David Tennant before. The episode, it's a Martha Jones episode where he is working at a school right before World War I.
The Pack episodes.
Yeah. Or he's forgotten who he is. He's put his identity into the pocket watch.
Family of Blood, and then
Human Nature is the first one.
Yeah, Human Nature and Family of Blood. Yeah, that. Yeah.
Yep. That whole bit I'm very fond of. I mean, I'm also, in my other life, a costume designer, so the period episodes often appeal to me.
Yeah, the BBC shows, when they do period pieces, they should be good at it by now, because they do a lot of them, and they must have one hell of a period wardrobe for that time period.
Right?
I mean,
and sometimes I feel like I see I don't know if this is true or not, but sometimes I wonder if they've got a warehouse somewhere that they just pull things out of. Because I'll see something in a totally different show and be like, I'm pretty sure I've seen that dress before. I think maybe they just like pulled that out of a warehouse somewhere.
I would not be surprised. I mean, they do. I watch a lot of British TV. I even subscribe to Acorn TV on the internet to watch stuff that's not on anything else. And they do a lot of period stuff. I would not doubt that they have just a massive warehouse somewhere where it's like, oh, you need a dress? Okay, come on.
This is what we got. Well, I mean, like, that would be the only cost-effective way to do it, I suppose.
Yeah.
But they do. There's, like, I've seen websites where they talk about, like, in different, like, Jane Austen movies, how, like, oh, this dress appeared in Sense and Sensibility, and then you see it again on this character, and this, and I'm like, so apparently they do have the big warehouse of costumes, and they go, okay, this period, this is what we have.
Yeah.
What is, yeah, and apparently I'm missing a whole internet community of people just for me.
How about you?
Yeah, I would say so. The Pack episodes, those two are some of my favorite. The Van Gogh episode is, I think, the moment at the end of that episode with Bill Nighy, and then the fact that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I don't know. I love it's one of the more interesting kind of portrayals of depression and portrayals of that kind of thing that I've seen, because it you see this very real, very beautiful moment that this actor has of everyone's dream of seeing what their legacy is and discovering that it's amazing, and then the fact that it still doesn't matter, and that spoke to me a lot as an artist and as a human being. I'm going to go out on maybe a limb here and say actually that if I can expand it into the Who universe, maybe my favorite episode actually comes out of Torchwood. Some of the later stuff, what is it? A Day in the Death of what's his name?
I'm not sure. Jack Harkness?
A Day in the Death of Owen Harper.
Oh, that was actually a very clever episode, yeah.
It's the show itself was not consistent, and it had some really, really, really poor stuff to slog through. But I feel like they had, I think the actor who plays Gwen Cooper, I don't have a name for her.
She really grew on me.
She might be my favorite, one of my favorite actors.
She started off in an Eccleston episode.
Yeah, she was
playing Gwen.
She played Gwyneth, and then in the future you find out that that's her descendant. Yeah.
Yeah, funny little joke there. Yeah, I thought that was clever.
In fact,
I think she's amazing, and several of the people, say what you will about John Barrowman, say that he chews scenery, and I watched Torchwood a long time ago and said, oh, that was really fun, and then went back and watched it again with Betsy, and I had kind of forgotten what he does on that show, and kind of his just playing to the far seats. But some of the other actors, I think, really brought some of the more nuanced performances in the Doctor Who universe. And maybe it's the same reason I like Rory and Amy, and I love the kind of very normal relationships that are happening amid all of this craziness and enormity. And that's been one of the fun things with Our Fair City, also to tell stories that are very kind of small and recognizable when we can, amidst this chaotic, crazy, weird world. I love in Torchwood, it's something that we noticed going through. In Doctor Who, no one ever eats. And in Torchwood...
There's a rare episode where they do, but you're right. For the most part, no one ever eats. In Torchwood, they were eating all the time.
Torchwood, they're always eating, and it's always really gross, sad food. Like, no one's happy. They're eating a sandwich in some paper, and it's clearly greasy, and it's getting all over them, and they're just like... It's clearly no one has time to stop because they're running around and trying to fix things while the Doctor is off gallivanting and swooping in right at the right time and saving the day in a spectacular manner, and they're kind of this just really, even though it's these it's aliens and everything, it's this kind of sad, pathetic grind that they have to do.
You've described the characters from Our Fair City that shovel the crap.
Yeah, the Festival Waste Collectors.
Yes, thank you. I couldn't. I was trying to think of the abbreviation. I couldn't think of it.
Yeah, PWCs.
The PWCs. Basically, that's what you. That's how. That's almost how the Torchwood guys are. They're always out there doing it.
Yep.
I mean, they seem to forget that they have a pterodactyl.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. No one stops and goes, "Wow, cool."
Yeah, you're surrounded by all this awesome alien tech and this cool stuff, and a pterodactyl, and then they're like, "Oh, this is horrible."
Yeah, if you don't have a doctor around, each of those things is probably going to kill you.
It's a good point too.
Or at least do something awful.
Well, there was in the 50th anniversary episode they show an archive. It was called. What was it called? Do you remember?
Oh.
It's basically all of the Doctor's
Black
artifact,
Archive?
the Black Archives or something, where it's anything related to the Doctor is kept there, and they're walking through and you see like a fez, you see like Amy's shoes, or no, River's shoes or something. You see all these things and you're like, how is that dangerous? But it's all these things that they deemed were dangerous to the world, and it's just in this big room.
That's really funny. I love the idea that I guess it's in the I don't know what the episode is called. It might be called Torchwood, but the werewolf episode in the David Tennant and Rose era.
Tooth and Claw.
Yeah,
one of my favorites. I love that episode.
Yeah, but yeah, the idea that the Torchwood had been created because the Doctor was dangerous to England. Now is I know that UNIT shows up in classic. How many of the other organizations also show up in the old Who?
Just UNIT.
Oh, okay.
I believe it's just UNIT.
Mm-hmm.
Torchwood I know for a fact not, and I believe it's just UNIT.
Yeah.
They changed the name of it though. It used to stand for United Nations Intelligence Task Force, and then I think the United Nations was like, "Hey, we don't want you using our name. We don't want you using our name for something cool." So now it's Unified Intelligence Task Force, I believe.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but no, Tooth and Claw to this day I think has one of the better looking werewolves, especially for a TV show.
Sure. Yeah, although it was just an awful show. But the werewolf transformation in that new Netflix original series.
Oh, I can't think of the name of it.
Hemlock Grove.
See, I've heard such like mixed reviews. There's nobody that says it's okay. I've heard it's horrible or it's great.
I know which category I'm in. I like bad sci-fi, and I just couldn't.
No. I'm with you. I love watching I watch some of the worst sci-fi movies like I can imagine. And then to top it off, I'll watch the Mystery Science Theater version of them too. And still be like, this movie's not bad, but I get where they're coming from making fun of it. But we're pretty much up to an hour. We usually go about an hour. I'm having a great time, but I'm going to have to cut us here.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having us on.
Thank you for joining us. We're planning on seeing you guys on the 18th.
Great. Yeah,
So-
we can't wait to see it.
Yeah, well, it'd be nice to meet people in person. We seem to know a lot of people through the internet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just
we know that
disembodied voices.
Yeah.
feeling. Yeah.
So
That's one of the things we like so much about going to the Convergence Sci-Fi Convention in Minneapolis is that we meet a lot of people that we only know through the internet.
it was funny because when we first did our first interview at Chicago TARDIS last year, it was Peter Davison, and there was this woman there, skinnier, dark hair, and she introduced herself, and it was Geek Girl Chicago, who I had talked to many times on Twitter. I'm like, hey, I know you, kinda. And so it was nice meeting her. She was really cool,
She's actually in a couple episodes of Our Fair City.
Yes, she is.
May or may not know.
Yeah, she is. And
She's a very good friend of ours.
Yeah, she's very cool. So, yeah, I know what you mean. You go to the conventions, you get to meet people, and you're like, yes, they do exist. So,
Well, we had Sarah, who
Yeah,
guested on our podcast, and
Yeah.
we had never met her in person. So
Yeah.
at Chicago Tart, well, I guess we both did the same thing separately to her. Like I'd seen her picture, and I'm like walking up to her. Are you
You, Sarah?"
Like, if you're not, I'm very sorry.
But thanks for joining us. Do you want to give a quick shout out again for the party?
Absolutely. So, our party is January 18th. That's Saturday at 8 p.m. at the Defibrillator Performance Art Gallery, which is on Milwaukee, south and east of Division and Ashland intersection, so near the Division Blue Line.
Okay.
If you want to learn more about the party or the show, you can go to ourfaircity.com or find us on Facebook at Our Fair City Radio, facebook.com/ourfaircityradio, Twitter at OFC Radio. And we love to hear from people. And go check out the show. It's a free podcast, or you can download or stream episodes for free online. You know, they're about 10 to 20 minutes each, so go check one out. If you like it, keep listening. If you don't, email links to all the folks you don't like.
All right, well, Jeffrey, Betsy, thanks for joining us. And
Thanks so much, and we'll look forward to seeing you in a couple weeks.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right, take care.
All right. So on our end, that was episode 26 of Two Girls, a Guy, and a TARDIS. Joanna, do you have anything you want to add? Anything?
I was just listening to what their thoughts and feelings, and it's nice because we're getting a different viewpoints on Doctor Who.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I agree. It was cool. It was nice hearing how the progression of their show's been, and you know what their backgrounds were and how they all came together. It was very neat, very interesting, very cool. Kind of like us. So, but yeah, there hasn't been any Doctor Who news.
Except the picture
Except the
of
picture
Peter
of Capaldi
pointing.
and Jenna Coleman, which is what you'd expect to see. There was some rumor that there's been a season 9 confirmed, but it was just Moffat saying that we're not splitting this season or the next one, but there was no real confirmation. So I guess that's been Two Girls, a Guy, and a TARDIS. Damn it! Two Girls, a Guy, and a TARDIS. And thanks for joining us. And check out Our Fair City. Help our friends out a little bit. See if you like it. And we will talk to you in a couple weeks.